Okay, good morning, everyone. Bonjour. Very welcome to today as we are commemorating and celebrating the National Indigenous Peoples Day in Canada. This is actually tomorrow, and many of us will join the Altosa celebrations and other celebrations which will take place all day. And indeed, this is National Indigenous Month. So as the Baha'i women of London wanted to recognize this day, which we did last year with a very successful and wonderful celebration, again, unfortunately, virtually, but in our willingness and in our heartfelt need to learn about our Indigenous brothers and sisters, about their rich and wonderful culture, and about their spirituality, which teaches us so much for our own lives and our own well-being. The Baha'i women of London really wanted to connect with our Indigenous sisters especially, and to really start this process of developing deep bonds of friendship and of listening and of learning from them. So that is why we have persisted in our efforts in this regard. And I hope that as soon as we are able to gather together in person, that we will be able to see, hug, and look in the eyes of our brothers and sisters, and to learn from them in face to face. But in the meantime, we have to still go on with some kind of this virtual platform. And now I just wanted to invite Elder Tracey Monica Whiteye to start. She has become a familiar face now with our Baha'i Women's London group. And I wanted to ask her, please, to start us off with an opening, which will include an acknowledgement and which will include a wonderful chant and prayers, as she knows best how to do. So,
all right.
Please.
Bonjour. Wabas Gisko Nikan Kai Tabit Nishnakas Makoto down Dinjaba Lenape Nation, Lani Lenape Nishnabe Koyan down. And what I said is Kolomosi, how are you? Hope everybody's well. My spirit name is Polar Bear Woman Who's Looking Ahead. I'm Bear Clan, and I'm originally from the Lenape Nation, which some know as Moravian Town of the Thames, Delaware Nation, and we reside around the Chatham-Kent area along the Thames River. My mom's originally from Georgian Bay area, up around the Bruce Peninsula. And so, and who I am and where I come from is I come from the waters of my mom, my grandma, my great-grandma, and my great-great-grandma. And that's where I originally come from, is those waters, of that whole, that intergenerational and all of that intergenerational knowledge and wisdom. I'm a mom. I have 2 boys, 2 sons that are now adults, and I have 2 grandchildren. I have another one on the way, and and I'm an auntie. And most importantly, I work every day to be that good friend to myself. And I would like to open up, first of all, just to acknowledge and give thanks to all of creation. It's like going on a journey. It's the first thing we do when we wake up is we give that chi miigwech and acknowledgement to that breath of air so that we can continue to breathe and live and learn. And most important, loving ourselves, eh? And so then if you go outside, the first thing you do is you put one foot on Mother Earth. So let's give thanks to Mother Earth and acknowledge it, all that she does for us and gives to us. And she really, really takes care of us. And to remember those 3 R's of responsibility, reciprocity, and respect. And so not only do we give thanks for all that she does, you know, for us and our responsibility is to take care of her. And sometimes all it can take is just a prayer of helping her, you know, sending those prayers and blessings to our Mother, the Earth. So let's take that time and that moment to acknowledge and give thanks to her and send that healing energy and healing vibes to our Mother, the Earth. And those trees, those plants, those strawberries, it's that strawberry month. That O'Damon, that heartberry, and many of us Indigenous women across Turtle Island are celebrating and honoring that leader of all berries, that strawberry. So I encourage you as well as I share that teaching, that medicine for you with you. Have fun with those strawberries. Go get some. Eat them. They're good for you. They nurture you. They feed you in so many body, mind, heart, and spirit. So I give thanks. So I got a cough. And also I give thanks to those 4-leggeds, those creepy crawlers, those 4-leggeds, and where we call, whether it's the makwa, the bear, the deer, the moose, and even our own fur babies that we have at home, our domestic cats and dogs. You know, I acknowledge them and give thanks for having those because they're part of who we are. They help us. They're our friends. But also when we talk about those 4-leggeds, how like the moose, the elk, and the bear, they give their life for us, eh? To help us in so many ways, whether it's sustaining us medicinal wise for healing and wellness, or for eating for foods. So I give thanks and honor them. And also I want to acknowledge the flyers, the winged ones, and all that they do. They teach us so much about this good life. And we just have to take that special moment, that special moment, just a special few seconds, and just give thanks for those winged ones and for all that they do. And so in the daytime, you look at that, you look up at the sky and you see those winged ones, but also you see our brother, the sun. Our brother, the sun, that gives us so much healing energy, so much to heal, that our brother, the sun, heals the waters, not only the waters of the rivers, the lakes, and the brooks that represents the blood of our Mother Earth, but also healing in who we are as spiritual beings, walking this human experience, hey? And that takes us, when we look around, let's acknowledge those waters. Let's acknowledge those oceans, those rivers, those lakes, those brooks, those streams that represent the veins of our Mother Earth. From Indigenous ways of knowing, that is the blood of our mother, and that is part of our roles and responsibilities as Indigenous women. Is we put our stomach down, we acknowledge, we ask for that healing for her. It's always that reciprocity, that giving and receiving. She gives us so much naturally and unconditionally. And she reminds us how we need to unconditionally acknowledge and love ourselves and for who we are. And then we go into the nighttime. We see those stars. We see the star nations, our ancestors up in the sky in a good, clear evening. I want to give thanks to those star nations, the star people, and our ancestors. And then when we look, and it's coming soon, that grandmother moon, the full moon cycle, that full moon, our grandmother, she's our original grandmother. And I want to give thanks and honor her because she reminds us Indigenous women, and not just Indigenous women, all women of all nations, and our men, the importance and that connection of what she teaches us and helps us. And part of those roles and responsibilities for women is she teaches us about fertility. She teaches us about self-love. And our grandmother moon, she controls the tides, the waters, fertility of all of creation, and the children that are coming in the future generations. And so I give thanks and acknowledge for all that she does. And then we go to the next level. The next is this spirit world, sky world, the universe. So I honor and give thanks to all of creation. And they say, and what I was taught by my teachers, if there's something that I've forgotten or something I forgot to mention in this opening, when I say all my relations, kanagana, that everything of all that there is. So chimiquach kajamanado, chimiquach kajamanado, chimiquach kajamanado, oh chimiquach kajamanado. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sing a song, and it's a song that a lodge that I belong to, and it's up in James Bay area. My brother Ali's been up there traveling a few years back, so he's familiar with some of our Nishiyu brothers and sisters up there. So this song comes from a Thunderbird Lodge that I belong to up around the James Bay area, and they're my Nishiyu family. And so I'm going to share this song with you, and it's called Creator's Song. And it goes something like this. And so ground yourself, close your eyes if you feel, take some nice deep breath in this song of gratitude, appreciation, and that importance of who you are as a beautiful spiritual being, especially in this month. It's Indigenous month. It's tomorrow's Indigenous Solidarity Day. It's Indigenous Solidarity Day every day. And I just want to acknowledge each and every one of you for bringing together in this beautiful circle, this sacred circle. All right, we'll begin. Way hey ya hey ya, 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 way ya hey ya, way hey ya hey ya hey yo. Gitche Benato, witchy na, witchy na, Gitche Benato, away ah hey ah hey, way ah hey ah hey, way ah hey ah hey, ya hey yo. Way ah hey, 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 ya hey yo. Gitche Menado, witchy na, witchy na, Gitche Menado, away ah hey, way ah hey, way ah hey, ya hey yo. Way ah hey, 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 ya hey yo. Gitche Menado, witchy na, witchy na, Gitchi Menado, away ah hey ah hey, way ah hey ah hey, way ah hey ah hey ah hey yo. Way ah hey ah hey, way ah hey ah hey, way ah hey ah hey, way ah hey ah hey. Way ah hey ah hey, way ah hey ah hey, way ah hey ah hey, ya hey yo. Gitchi menado, witchy na, witchy na, gitchi menado, away ah hey ah hey, way ah hey ah hey, way ah hey ah hey, ya hey yo. Whoo! All right, Miigwech, Kanagana, all my relations. All right.
Thank you very much. Helper Tracey. Tracey is a helper. And so she has helped us so much already, and we look forward to you helping us in the future because we need you. We need you so that we could improve, so that we could become better beings ourselves. Thank you so much, Miigwech. Now, the next part of our session, our celebration, and this is the time to celebrate Indigenous culture, Indigenous spirituality, the contribution of the Indigenous people to the world. So the next part of our session after that fantastic, wonderful opening is a presentation by Jordan Bighorn. And I call upon Rolando Aguilera, who himself has had long-standing relationships with our Indigenous communities because he is an Indigenous lawyer. He works for the government for Indigenous law, and he wouldn't give me a bio of himself. So that's as much as I'm going to say, is that Rolando has long-standing relationship with the Indigenous people, a deep love for our brothers and sisters, and is also helping the Baha'i women to deepen that relationship and to help us very much. So thank you, Rolando, for everything that you've been doing to help the women in this community to make those connections. And Rolando will introduce our next speaker, Jordan Bighorn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sepide. So so as Sepide mentioned, I work in the Indigenous Justice Division within the Ministry of the Attorney General. And really my work is centered on advising the government on ameliorating relationships between Indigenous people and the Crown. So I don't work in Indigenous law per se, specifically, but we do inform the things we do with the assistance and advice of elders and people from community, which is big. I'm going to provide an introduction to Jordan, but I just wanted to situate a little bit about what we're going to do in a little bit of a historical context. I have a tendency to want to do that to sort of give us a sense of where we are now, and where we're coming from, and where we're going. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because we've invited Jordan, and he's being beamed in all the way from Winnipeg, so I'm not going to take. But I will take us back to the year 1969. Bryan Adams said it was a good year, but it was a good year and a seminal year in Canadian history. Some of you may recall and some of you also may not be aware of, that in 1969, there was an idea hatched within, the governance systems, of Canada to resolve the Indian problem once and for all. That there was a document, a position that was advanced at the time. It was called the Statement of the Government of Canada on Indian Policy, also known as the White Paper. White Paper is just a policy paper. And the idea was Indigenous people's status at the time was really acting as a barrier to their full emancipation within, the dominant Euro-Canadian society. The policy paper was not received well by Indigenous peoples, and the Indian chiefs of Alberta responded to this white paper with their own policy document called Citizens Plus in 1970, and they affectionately termed it the Red Paper. In 1969, another movement was hatched or formed, which was called the American Indian Movement. It was established in the United States. This movement occupied Alcatraz that same year, and they went on to occupy the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in an effort to protest the continued efforts of American federal government to assimilate Indigenous peoples, what was called down there as the Indian termination policies. Other important intellectual developments were happening in the Americas. Specifically, I will quote from, refer to efforts in South America by Fausto Reynaga, who was an Aymara man, wrote a couple of works called The Indian Revolution and The Indian Manifesto. A lot of things happening in 1969. And I will end here with the efforts of a Canadian woman. Some of you may know her name, May Sutherland Maxwell. In 1969, she penned a paper to the Indigenous peoples of the Americas. And in that document, if you ever have the opportunity to read it, she actually engages with some of these prevalent ideas that inform this solutions to the Indian problem, or these Indian termination policies. In this letter penned in the same year, 1969, she extols the unique station of Indigenous peoples in the Americas and the future material and spiritual advancement of our world. She very subtly but very clearly repudiates the doctrine of discovery, a doctrine that was formed at the end of the 15th century that authorized European monarchs to claim ownership over land in exchange for the promise to Christianize Indigenous peoples, meaning assimilate them by force from their own spiritual systems, their own governance systems, into a Eurocentric worldview. And she repudiates this doctrine, okay? The Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 2015 called on Canada and the provinces to examine all of their laws and to officially repudiate the doctrine of discovery and all laws that are based on this concept. She calls into question and refutes the ideology of racial superiority, so prevalent at the time and still with us today. So I just wanted to highlight that, one being that this is an event that's organized by the Baha'i Women's Group of London, and the efforts to really take on a lot of these predominant ideologies that still act as barriers, but also to provide an intellectual heritage and spiritual heritage within which the work that's being done today is really a continuance of that work. So that being said, it gives me great pleasure to again welcome our guest, Jordan Bighorn from Winnipeg, Manitoba, on this Father's Day. So thank you very much, Jordan, for taking the time. I'm going to provide a little bit of introduction to Jordan for all our guests today. Jordan Bighorn is of Lakota heritage, hailing from Fort Peck, Assiniboine Sioux, and Standing Rock Sioux communities. He currently is co-director of the Community Education Development Association out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. He's also the co-producer of a short film called The Path Home. This film was commissioned by the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Canada and screened at an international conference on peace, hosted by the Kroc Institute for International Peace Studies at the University of Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. We welcome Jordan today, and thank you very much for being with us.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for that, Rolando. I'd just like to immediately and first acknowledge Elder Tracey. Thank you for that opening up for us and the song and connecting us, particularly from the traditional and current lands of where you and your community come from. I am currently, as Rolando said, beaming in from Treaty 1 territory of the Cree, the Ojibwe, the homelands of the Métis Nation, and of course, not far to the west is my own relative, the Dakota. And further up north, we have Oji Cree and Dene, and way up there are Inuit relatives who often come down from Rankin Inlet into Winnipeg here. So, just quickly, I'd like to take one moment to engage in a very traditional Indigenous way of relationship building, and that, of course, is teasing. We often have issued trusting lawyers these days. They've got their own history, and when we started off here hearing that a lawyer didn't want to provide his bio or background, I really got concerned. So fortunately, I know Orlando well, and his presentation here really placing us in context of some of these larger issues, these colonial, these technical, these relational issues was very well done. It actually helped me bring some things to mind that I'd like to comment on today. So thank you for that, Rolando. You're safe. We know who you are. You're most welcome. With it being Father's Day, yes, I'd like to bring to mind my own father, Jacob Bighorn. He is my connection to the Fort Peck community in eastern Montana, and the Bighorns there are known for generations of being involved in education and basketball. So I did follow basketball as far as I could, and passed it on to my children now. But education is something that's just been in the blood of our family for many generations. My parents were educators and teachers. I work in the field of education. My sister is a teacher, Jelena, in Vancouver. And of course, at any point in time with education, you're interacting with people and developing relationship. And I'd just like to start with a letter that my dad had written to his students in the 80s when he was, just starting his career. My parents were working at a place called, and as cruel irony to some of the backdrop of today, they were working at Chumawa Indian School, which is one of the 2 or 3 still in operation native boarding schools in the United States that, of course, shares the same historic history as to why they were put in place, which was to assimilate and change native communities. Of course, the states took their own path to where they are today, and then we know how things turned out here in Canada. But indeed, the whole concept of having institutions to begin to change communities from the inside out, beginning with their children, did originate in form in the States. And they were called industrial schools, normalization schools. They weren't as immediately prevalently used and directed by the church and churches, but eventually became so. And Canada took that, of course, a step further. And then we're learning a lot about that, or have learned to date, of the effects of those. Now, over time, those two schools, Chemawa Indian School in Oregon and Haskell Indian School in Kansas, both have been, how should we say, reclaimed by Native communities to be a little bit more, again, reflective and appropriate to support and change some of that education and history for communities. And as a child, you know, as all children are brought into this world with a blank slate, and you are pure and innocent, and you're trying to learn of things. I will never forget going around the football field on a weekend where Chemawa had a football team. And I guess I have the strange fortune, if you will, to have this particular impression of, if you can imagine a high school sporting event and all the popcorn, the concessions, the excitement, the whistles, for me, it was just a complete normalized experience that would have not had any kind of baggage to it, history, heartbreak, and on top of which, these were Indians in the States. These were Native youth. These were people that I would just idolize. I didn't know who they were, but I knew they had unbelievably beautiful last names, and they were strong, and there were cheerleader. I mean, the whole scene, the whole American scene, as it were. And the campus was beautiful. It had all the amenities. Until I had one experience going with my mother to her office late one night on the weekend, and she worked as a counselor there, where later I came to understand that the school had within it a treatment center, a treatment program. I didn't know what that was at that time. And when we went to go to her office, there was a room in the center of this facility, beautiful facility, and there were mats laid out. And when we went to her office, we had to go through this room. And when we walked through, there was a young man there on the floor, face down, with his hands handcuffed behind his back. And he was rolling in his own vomit. And as we walked by, he saw us, and he kept saying over and over, "Help me out, help me out, help me out." I really did not know what had happened or what was going on. And really only later, as Rolando provided, you layer on the understandings, the histories. Where does this come from? What is it all about? What does it mean now? Did I understand the other side of this school and what it brought and what it represented for the young people that would come there, and bringing with them the pains and the history of their parents and the generations before, who continue to go through so much devastation and injustice and oppression. And he was simply there as a result, so much of that. So that, in contrast to those experiences on the football field, is where I'm going to share with you a few thoughts today. But coming back to my father and finding this letter that he wrote to his students, this is also, to me, where there's 2 points that I'd like to share, and there's a contrast and a conflict in these two environments of these points that I'd like to share. In an institution that would have had this history and it's still education, and I'm sure my dad would still had to fight with the Oregon curriculum, so to speak. He still taught in a certain way and expressed this to his students, and this would have been a letter written as the year was closing, and they would be going back across North America up to Alaska to their home communities. So he says, "To all you young ladies and boys, you young men and girls, and Sam Butterfly too. You know, it's kind of a joke, but there, look at what a name, Sam Butterfly. Wow. In the Indian way, I've experienced the following because of you. For those of you who have been in my classes, and for those of you who I've met outside of class, you have given me the greatest honor any person can possibly give another. You have allowed me to see and experience and touch the Creator in your lives. I have witnessed this not through my physical eyes so much as I have through the eyes of the Spirit. I felt the voluntary handshakes between us as we grew to understand and know one another. I have heard so many times the voiced apologies from you for things done which have been all forgotten. I've been present when your personal differences between each other have flared into angry or mad and frustrated exchanges, have also witnessed the unspoken apologies you've given each other. I've watched you become big boys and girls right there in front of my eyeballs. More importantly, I've felt the developing of the powers of your humanity. I've experienced your humanness, your laughter, your anger, your tears, your pains, and your joys. The greatest part of all of this is the vast range of different personalities which were sharing these things with me. Each of you has left a part of yourselves with me. Like the stars I described during Balloon Day, I want you all to know that wherever you are, whenever you are, why ever you are, me and my family, my people are taking care of that part of you. And if you ever need to come back and remember or experience the part of you that you've left with me, just do this. Look up into the sky, check out the millions of stars up there and say to yourselves, man, whoever put this place together must be pretty powerful. Then consider that Mr. Bighorn, another human being, mind you, considers you to be just as powerful. And I have one of the stars from your universe to take care of. I'm going to miss these little brown human beings because A, they're special, B, they're decent, C, they're my hope, and D, I love them, and E, all of the above. And he assigned it on behalf of him, my mom, and at the time, just my sister and myself, and my younger brother hadn't come along yet, but you know, I found this and I was reading, I thought I'd share it, but you get into the moment, I really can feel my father here with me right now. And he taught this way all his career. And then eventually we moved to Canada where my parents worked at Maxwell International Baha'i School. And he taught the same way and found a more flourishing environment to share this type of education, an education of the soul. But at the backdrop of Chemawa Indian School, you can see the vast difference of education that was happening in his and many other classrooms like his versus the kind of education that my grandparents, my great-grandparents, many others, I imagine many of Tracey's communities would have faced in those other schools. And what that would have done over years and years of a very different message than being powerful, being human, and being valued. I'd next like to share a short clip from a good old, some of you I see would have come from a generation of an old CBC show called Man Alive, I believe it was called. And this is another elder who is sharing another point. And now we're going to jump way back to perhaps a different classroom where we all cultures, all places have a story of a point of origin, a creation story. The one that, of course, really got first print, got a first chance to be told was that of Adam and Eve and the garden and paradise and what happened there. So we're probably familiar with that one. But out of that story, you can trace so much of what began when we were whole and human and pure something happened and we lost that. And from that mentality, from that understanding, it was projected throughout time to where even today, an innocent child can be born and immediately there's something wrong. You were born with something wrong with you. You were born without the purity, without the wholeness of your creator, and you need to do something in order to save that. Ernest Tutusis provides a very different understanding of this part of the world in relation to that story, and that's where I'd like to begin some of my comments.
Our story, the way the older people tell us that it's very close to something like Adam and Eve, but it just happens that a North American Indian never disobeyed in his garden. That's why in 1492 they found us living on this land and God was taking care of everything. We let him run the business and we didn't have to work like the white man did, and he provided our food and the air on land and in water, and all we had to do was live in harmony with his creation and respect God above all. And this is holy land. This is land where man has never disobeyed God. That is to live against nature, to be building dams, to tear the land, and to try and conquer nature. We never did. And this is holy land. This water running down here, the Cut Knife Creek here, and then there's Battle River runs down there. And the old people tell us that these are the right hand instruments and servants of God. It's the sun, the wind, and the water, and the fire. These are holy things, spiritual things. We're supposed to live with those things.
So in a minute and 40 seconds maybe, I had grown up watching the Ten Commandments, and my father was a Presbyterian. The other, I guess I should say, the other part of the Bighorn family, particularly in Montana, is also the church, the Dakota Presbytery. That's another huge part of what allowed the family to survive and grow and have strength. And so I've grown up with the universality of these truths, of these spiritual truths of Creator and our relationship to Him. But there's all that gray stuff in the middle as well, a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of peculiarities, and a lot of things to try to make sense of in the backdrop, certainly, of what happened in residential schools. But this 1 minute and 40-some second clip, when I first saw it, although I'd come to certain conclusions myself, just that not let go entirely. And it allowed things, for me at least, to flow back and forth to the purity of where these teachings, even from a biblical standpoint to a Middle Eastern, to wherever that you might get to saying this is where the origin of these stories come from, to have understanding. And when we think of what Ernest meant by saying it's not that we did not disobey God and that He provided a rule and we broke it, a practical application of going against the Creator's law is we did not go against nature. We did not do things that would have been out of alignment with the world around us. And we see that now perhaps most understandably in land-based education or environment or fighting pipelines or preserving sacred sites. But it's far, far deeper than that. We heard Tracey speak of being this mother to us all. We all come from the womb of Mother Earth. And similarly to our mothers in the room who got to have Mother's Day, you come first. So May is Mother's Day and then is Father's Day. So we're second. I'm sure you're all thankful that the pain and the suffering to have children come from you, that you don't have to go through the suffering and have them come back. It's a one-way street. But our Mother Earth is not a one-way street. She's carrying all of us from time immemorial, and then when it's time to go, she takes us back. She takes us in whatever form that we come in. If in war, our bones are obliterated in an explosion, or if we're buried in the most precious care, she takes us back and holds us for time immemorial. It's a beautiful relationship. And in Ernest's understanding of what was broken, I grew up watching Ten Commandments, I may have said. My grandfather and I used to play who would be Ramses, who would be Moses, and it was really only under this passion of this relationship and story of interacting with Creator. It's not so much, again, the Christian history of it, but just this relationship with Creator, interacting with Creator. Because, of course, for generations, we've been separated and pulled away from the immediate means of interacting with Creator, which would have been our environment and one another. Certainly a child to their parent. So instead of thinking of Adam taking a bite of an apple of the tree of knowledge and breaking a law of God and then being thrown out of paradise, Adam was the first person to create a commercial initiative out of the resources of that forest. He cut down the first tree to turn it into a paper mill. Okay, very different kind of way of looking at what was broken. You have to leave because I can see now that you're going to turn paradise into a resource development complex. Because in truth, you might break a law, but you're going to be paying for it anyways. And we are certainly paying for what we've done to our mother over time immemorial. There's further things to this in regards to this understanding. And in particular, when we see the immediate blunt impact to our children in those schools, was there was something wrong, there was something evil, when we didn't have any concept of that. There's one great quote from one of the chiefs, it might have been even Chief Seattle, who said something along the lines of, we never quarreled about God. We didn't have any reason to quarrel about God. In other words, when this concept of this is God and this is not God was put to the people, there was no way to process that because there was no need to quarrel about God. It's unknowable. How could we know? And over time, you can see how that layers on challenges of engaging with the world and coming back to a sense of oneness and community when this incongruency, there's another God, there's this God, there's that God, who's right, who's wrong. But generation after generation of whatever you have is wrong, is evil, and has to be changed. And indeed, as we now see so much more change happening in name or history, to kill the Indian in the child is a very particular mindset. This is all in our backdrop. I see Reagan Brissett with the picture that she has for her Zoom box here. Every child matters. This is our backdrop. I wanted to ensure, though, that given as tomorrow is, as Tracey said, a day of solidarity, of celebration, this also is something that there's good news here too, folks. This isn't always have to be so difficult, because things are definitely moving in a certain direction. We may have tests and challenges, but my sense is from an Indigenous standpoint, you'll notice that as most of you are here because somebody in your family line recognized that things in your homelands were not okay, or there was a threat to safety, or that you were forcibly removed, much like treatment here in this part of the world. But in your family history, in those lines, found a way to come here. There was this sense that the new world, and again, as Erna said, 1492, the new world is something new out there. There's a place of opportunity, of freedom, of hopes and dreams. I got to go there. And whether it's from a social migrational standpoint, over time in history, that eventually the whole world came here, so there was nowhere else to go. We're yet one of the remaining, if not the remaining, cardinal race, if you will, North American Indians, who have not left their homelands. We have not set ourselves to an exodus to Bermuda or China or somewhere or some country that would give us safe harbor, seeking asylum from Russia or South America. What this is the story of the world, of North America, of Canada. You have all come to our paradise, to this paradise. This is land, as Erna said, where humanity has never disobeyed God. It is a paradise. In our histories, we don't have a story where we have crucified the Son of God. We don't have a creation story where we have pointed guns and fired at a messenger of God. We don't have an example of beheading a successor to a messenger of God. Everywhere we look, there is example of struggle and growth and understanding, but there is always alignment. And this isn't, again, out of any type of popularity contest. This is just simply why is the world here? Why are we not all, again, in China, well, China today, or the Middle East today, or elsewhere? Why here? And part of that for me, and the thought that, again, thanks to Rolando, is providing some of that context of so much that was happening out of 1969, 70, and so forth. There is a trajectory for all of us, for humanity. And during that time, what came immediately to my mind was this image here. During this time, that same point where what Rolando shared, some of the context, this image was also the first time in 1969 that an astronaut took a picture of our home from another celestial body, from the moon. There were images taken, beforehand, but we all might recognize this. It's called the blue marble, arguably the most widely distributed photograph. But up until the late 1960s, 70s, we had never, as an entire species, seen our home. And again, this is a 2D image. Later on, there was in the 90s, there was the first video of going all the way around the planet. Regardless, how could any of us visualize or actualize oneness and relationship and unification unless we knew what we were looking at, unless we knew what our mother looked like? We might have had vision and understanding and dream, but wow, as they say, a photograph has a million words behind it. Beautiful photograph, and so much more to come. And now we're looking out again into the universe. So this point of beginning with reestablishing a connection to Creator, an understanding of Creator in relation to all of us, that it is a measure of alignment with our mother, with the land around us, to not live against nature and what she's telling us. I'd also like to end with a reflection on what then do we do as human beings? What is that first step we should take? How will we learn? If the land provides us our classroom, who is the instructor? What are the instructions? What is that law? What are the things that we shouldn't break? I want to share a story from the Baha'i history, the Baha'i faith, which preceded the Baha'i faith, But this story I was trying to pull up the interview where I have this on tape so that the man who shared it could be the one to tell it, but I couldn't get it to work. I was having an issue. But his name is Alex Half, an Anishinaabe man from Eastern Ontario here, a Baha'i, who shared this story with such passion because there was a point at which that I could feel, and as I read it and went back and found the source of it, etc., it is such an alignment from an Indigenous understanding of finding humility and oneness within our environment, but seeking where we're going, because we're going to leave this place. We're going to the other side camp, as they say. We know that this is just the beginning of our journey. And this story is kind of, again, universal, allegorical. It's a means of understanding how is it that when we're born into this land and this environment, where we know to take the next step and the next, and then the biggest questions of life, when we leave, what does it mean when we leave this place? So this story is quite simple. In the history, and again, the universal part, the Bob is this young messenger. He's sharing a new message to the people. It's upsetting things. It's changing the natural order of the people of the day. And there's a lot of strife and fear, and those following are being killed and ostracized, and there's prejudice, and those in power don't want this to happen. You know, their understanding, their beliefs are the ones that have to stay true. And this interaction between a very illiterate, humble camel driver, this conversation is happening with the merchant who hired him to take him through the desert. And it goes like this. On such long journeys, the party had to stop. And this, sorry, I just want to reiterate that this is Alex Half would have been sharing this. And I really wish I had that video so he could tell this story. On such long journeys, the party had to stop 2 or 3 times a day for rest to feed the animals. On one occasion, when they were resting, the merchant decided to speak to Hashim, who was the caravan driver, and try to guide him back to the fold. So he called him to come and join the others. Having thanked him for his selfless service and care, he began to converse with Hashim and asked, "How is it that with all my knowledge, I have failed to appreciate the validity of the message of the Bab, while you, an almost illiterate person, claims to have recognized the truth of his mission?" Hashim took a handful of sand in his hand and said, "People like me have no merit in society. They are like the sand in the desert, which has no value. Yet, when the sun rises in the morning, this sand is the first to become illumined by its rays. A learned man, however, is like a precious jewel. It is kept locked up in a box, in a room, and when the sun rises, it remains in darkness." He goes on to share a little bit more of that journey. And I should have said also, those are Alex's words. I kind of transcribed in the video how he told the story. When Alex got to the point of saying people like me have no merit in society, you know, Alex presents as somebody who has lived a life where society has told him time and time and time again that he has no merit. But the light in his eyes to understand the truth of that story, that society, the jewel, the technical, the expertise. Yes, I'm so pleased we've got to see a picture of our planet, but everything society to date has produced, this jewel of Western civilization, is kept in a box and is in darkness, because the invaluable, the worthless sand, the people are unsheltered and homeless people who are sleeping on the streets. When the sun rises, they are the first to be illumined, while I was upstairs mad because my 4-year-old climbed in bed. I closed the curtains because the sun rises so early now. I want some more sleep. I want to be kept in darkness. Of course, this is a spiritual allegory, a spiritual story of turning towards Creator. And wherever that sun rises, however that warmth and light hits you, how will you respond? So, to acknowledge the London Baha'i Women's Group, thank you for providing this space and doing the work that you're doing and the relationships you have with your community. These 2 points, how to realign our understanding to our Creator wherever you are on this planet. Every place certainly is a paradise in its own right. And what is that first step, that first lesson that would have come from a messenger? We all have examples of great teachers in our communities and our histories. And if at the core of their message was quite simply, what in the environment becomes the first receptor of that light versus what needs to take time, what stays underground and needs to have a process before it reaches its light. You might find that in your community, who are those representatives that are first being illumined? And I gave just a quick example. Our homeless and unsheltered folks who are out there. In the dead of minus 30 Winnipeg, they're out there. And in the heat of plus 30 Winnipeg, they're out there, as an example. But the best of both worlds, just as my father's example of utilizing an education facility that not a mile away still had the old Chamawa Indian School building, and they kept it there as this very powerful contrast, this beautiful brand new building and complex, and this old schoolhouse to remind them and to always have that connection of where they've come from and where they don't want to be and where they can go, in that letter and expression to his students, who for many of them, that school was a life-saving environment. It changed the direction of their life because it pulled them away from a lot of struggle, a lot of challenge. It's of no fault of their own. Thank you for this time. Thank you, Rolando. We'll look for your bio next time. Thank you, Sepide, for opening, and certainly to Tracey for the song, and all of you for being here. It's going to be a wonderful day tomorrow. And as things to come, there's lots, I think, that we'll find in this journey of reunification and oneness. Maybe this next word, as opposed to reconciliation, is reunification. Neil deGrasse Tyson, if you pick, that popular science guy, if you find a YouTuber, he describes what he feels to be the most significant thing beyond the space race and everything was Columbus. And this, I want to maybe explain that so we don't get off track there, because he brought a lot of tough stuff too, but just from the reunification of humanity, unfortunately, it took a very different way, but finally, the two hemispheres of the planet came together. And then from then on, here we are. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jimmy Gwetch. Jordan, I don't know how to thank you. That was one of the most inspiring few moments I've had in my life in recent moments. You've moved us, you've shared with us some very personal stories of true history. And you've helped us really gain some new insights into the journey that we're on, to shed some more light on the path that we're on. We're really eternally grateful to you. I've written some notes, extensive notes, and I'm very happy that this gathering, this circle here, this sharing circle will be also shared on the internet with others to be able to see in the future. And I particularly loved your final conclusions, which really give hope about reconciliation being reunification and increasing consciousness of our oneness of all of us together. And Rolando's term, I'm going to steal it as well, as we Turtle Islanders, or you Turtle Islanders have been here for a long time and really welcomed us as guests onto these lands. And hopefully we'll gain an increasingly deeper consciousness of this and of the way that the Indigenous peoples are destined to help us come back into harmony with the Creator's mother, with the mother and with the Creator and with the universe. And I think you obviously have a very important destiny to play in that. I am grateful to call again on our helper, Elder Tracey Whiteye, to help us conclude this session with another one of her wonderful chants and remembrances.
Hi, bonjour. Miigwech, Jordan, for sharing from your perspective and sharing, the understanding from the Indigenous ways of knowing from your area. I wanted to acknowledge that and all that there is. And I guess being second generation residential school survivor, living with a first generation residential school survivor and my whole life, and walking that good life and gaining that understanding of that impact of disconnection, of loss of culture, language, loss of who we are, our identity, and how we continue to find our truth of the true history, not from the colonializers or Western Eurocentric belief system, and how somehow it was forced upon us, and how today we are reclaiming who we are. We're reclaiming and how resilient we truly are as Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island and all of creation. And some of the history that's out there is untrue, that they try to teach us in the education system. And today we're making those changes. We're speaking. They talk about truth and reconciliation. Today we are speaking our truth. We knew about what was happening in those residential schools. We knew about those children that were being buried and hidden. And now I just want to acknowledge Kamloops for it's coming where we're able to speak and our Indigenous lives matter and our voices matter. And that's what's important today. And I want to acknowledge this group and for their prayers, their beautiful medicine, their beautiful healing energy. In the last few times we've met, your heartfelt healing vibrations, healing medicine that we come together interconnectedly, interrelatively, as one, with one mind and one heart. And that, to me, when we honor and acknowledge and we talk about that circle of life, some people call it medicine wheel teachings. I call it that circle of life in those four directions. That's why when we sing those songs 4 times, it acknowledges those 4 directions of east, south, west, and north, but also those 4 nations, those 4 races, red, yellow, black, and white. Those 4, all of those, that center of who we are. When we look in the center of that circle of life, that's our center, that's our fire, that's who we are as spiritual beings, learning and walking this human experiences. And so I want to acknowledge these human experiences that we're learning here today, and each of us. And I just want to say, Miigwech, it's so amazing. I just love you, Allie. I know I center you out every time. But you're awesome. You're freaking amazing, Allie. And I just
I love you more. I love you more.
good to meet your brothers and sisters and how we can collectively come together and honor one another. So I just want to say Chimigwach and Shekyawango and just kind of gonna all my relations, all of us coming together. Oh, all right. Am I supposed to sing a closing song? Is that what you want me to have?
That would be lovely. We love your
Okay.
songs. If you can.
I have my two sisters in the background. They can join in. No.
That's good.
Well, what song am I going to sing? So, Wichita, Wichita, do ya, Wichita, do ya, hey. Wichita, do ya, Wichita, do ya, hey. Ashatanaya, hey, ya, hey, ya. Ashatanaya, hey, ya, hey. Ashatanaya, hey, ya, hey, ya. Ashatanaya, hey, ya, hey. Wichita, do ya, Wichita, do ya, hey. Wichita, do ya, Wichita, do ya, hey. Ashatanaya, hey, ya, hey, ya. Ashatanaya, hey, ya, hey. Ashatanaya, hey, ya, hey, ya. Ashatanaya, hey, ya, hey. Woo! I had to share them with you. We went out we're out on a getaway. We went to the waters and we did some songs and prayers, and so this is us getting together, taking care of ourselves. So miigwech, when I wanted to share my amazing sisters with you, because you're my extended family now. So have an amazing day and happy Father's Day to you guys.
Yes.
You know, and future fathers. All right. Bama P.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tracey, for everything. And your sisters. That was fantastic. The trio. We'll have to meet you all in person. We look forward to that very soon. To be able to have you to provide, to see you, to welcome you.
Okay.
Extended family.
All right.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, all the participants. And have a wonderful day. Happy National Indigenous Peoples Day and month. And let's celebrate all the good things moving forward. And we're so happy to have made connections with everyone here today. Chimigwech. All the best. Bye-bye.